In the year UC 0087, the dynamics of space have changed greatly since the one-year war had ended 7 years prior. For the Federation, the Special Forces group known as the Titans have been formed. Led by Jamitov Hyman, with the full support of the Federation military brass, the Special Tasks Force was assembled with the express purpose of keeping another war breaking out by any means necessary. During the Side 1 incident, we saw that it includes gassing a colony full of civilians. A little bit much there, guys. For Zeon, it means that they have been shunted into the background. Remnants of Zeon that caused Operation Stardust to happen in the first place open the door for Jamitov Hyman to seize power. In another part of space, Haman Karn watches and waits to see what the rest of space is going to do in response to the Federation's changes. As for Shar Aznable, he has reinvented himself. Gone is the mask, replaced by a pair of sunglasses. The name of Shar Aznable has also been tossed away, replaced by the name of a Federation officer declared MIA during the one-year war. Now going is Quattro Bagina. He is a key figure in a group called the Ayug, who have been making trouble for the Titans. At this point, we find ourselves on the cusp of another war. Also at this point, it goes without saying that without the leadership of the great General Revel, that the Federation military's corruption is now its single driving force. The Ayug finds itself as the underdogs in the conflict, having to figure out exactly how you dismantle a special forces group that has more materials, more soldiers, more budget, and more mobile suits, even if you happen to have one-year war veterans from both sides of the last war on your team. It's in this episode of Gundam Explained, the Gryps War, that we're going to talk about the dynamics of what's going on, and how one Gundam and one nerdy little brat can make all the difference in the world. So wake up, dear audience. Wake up and smell the ashes. Picking up where we left off with the last episode, Lieutenant Quattro, along with Apolli and Roberto, are headed toward Side 7's Green Noah colonies, which will soon be renamed to Gryps. The Ayug have received intelligence of multiple Gundams being developed by the Titans. On the colony that they're headed to, we're also introduced to a young kid named Kamille Bidan. As he explains to his young friend Fa Yuri, while he's literally running away from his school, he's skipping karate practice. Why? Because he's a brat. Well, Fa joins him in this as Kamille hops into his car and heads to the spaceport to be a 17-year-old nerd, as if his green poofy hair wasn't enough of an indication of that.
Tommy, when a pikey walks in with hair like that, you've got to ask yourself, have I made a mistake?
You see, Kamille wants to see the shuttle flying in because it happens to be carrying our old friend Bright Noah, who Kamille is a bit of a fanboy of. Well, when they get to the spaceport, they run into the Titans. Now, the thing about Kamille is he's pretty sensitive about his name. Now, how sensitive, you might ask? Well, watch what happens when this jackass who looks like an Aryan Hassan Piker makes fun of him.
I thought I heard a girl's name. But that kid looks like a boy. But that kid looks like a boy. But that kid looks like a boy.
Activating combat mode.
Needless to say, one teenager does a lot more damage to these trained military members than he honestly should, but still loses in the end. Believe it or not, this fight is effectively the beginning of the end of some of these pilots' lives. We'll see that later, though. Out in space, Quattro manages to break into the colony in his Rick Diaz without much trouble. It's also here that we see something I forgot to mention last time. Hidden in the knuckle of the Rick Diaz is what's called a sealant launcher, which does kind of what you think it does. He uses it to keep some workers from reporting his entry and breaks into the colony. Now, while getting out of the mobile suit and scouting things out, Quattro does manage to find the hangars where they keep mobile suits on the colony. While he's up in the skies of the colony, he sees a face he's all too familiar with. Thing is, this one isn't white, red, and blue, but rather black and navy blue. This brand new Gundam that he's hunting for quite literally flew right in front of his face. This is the Gundam Mark II. The RX-178 Gundam Mark II, as you would expect from the name, is the successor to the RX-78 line of Gundams. Now, before I get into armament, we need to talk about what makes this suit a big deal. This mobile suit is the first one developed to utilize a new way of mobile suit builds called the mobile frame concept. The basic idea about this was that the frame of the mobile suit would contain all of the vital mechanisms of the suit, as opposed to just the inner frame only being a structural framework. The only thing that the skeleton of the mobile suit would not have would be weaponry, the armor, and the propellant tanks. So basically, it would prevent a situation like the one that got South Burning killed in 0083, when his Gym Custom basically just got nicked. This method also gave the suit much more maneuverability, energy efficiency, and reliability. Another thing you'll notice about the suit is that the armoring does leave certain parts of the frame exposed. The prevailing idea at this time with mobile suit development is that since beam weaponry was becoming the standard, there really wasn't any type of armor that could stop a beam weapon in its tracks. So, speed became the new priority. On top of that, this suit also adopts the 360 panoramic cockpit of the Alex and the GPO-3. Now, the downside of this Gundam is that it's actually not made from Gundanium, but rather from an inferior titanium alloy ceramic composite, which is a bit more fragile. As for the weaponry, it carried 2 beam sabers on its back, a beam rifle, a hardpoint attached shield, a bazooka, and a detachable Vulcan pod, which I am assuming is 60mm, but I couldn't find the exact specifications. Now, even though the Gundam has already spotted him, Quattro does manage to evade it, and asks the question we should already know when it comes to the Titans on whether or not they give a shit about firing Vulcans inside of a colony. After evading the Gundam, Quattro manages to get back to his Rick DS with the intel that he's gathered, along with Apolli and Roberto getting data of their own, and then they get back in touch with Quattro. Now, back with Kamille, after that brutal beating he got from the Titans, we see him being interrogated by an MP, where we learn more about the kid. He's apparently a junior mobile suit champion and a 2-year running champ of an air glider tournament. Though he gets a compliment that he is a prime candidate for military service, the MP is more concerned on whether or not Kamille is part of the AUG. After the kid seems to hallucinate with a vision of space underneath the table that he's sitting at, he's then released from confinement. Well, until he gets into another fight. This time with the MP, where he does his best Mirko Crocop impression and kicks the fucker in the head. Now, it doesn't really work in his favor, but what does is the roof collapsing. During the panic of all this, we see Camille's mother, Lieutenant Hilda Bidan, who is there to bail him out, managing to spot him, but Kamille takes off. He then steals a car and manages to escape. We see the reason for the collapse was Lieutenant Jared, because one thing you'll learn about Jared as this goes on is that he is only good at failing. At this point, an assault begins on Gryps to steal the Gundams. A hole gets blown in the colony, and Quattro, Apolli, and Roberto begin the assault in their Rick Diaz suits. Elsewhere, we find a young Titans pilot with a beret who berates Lieutenant Jared for sucking. See what I did there? Berates? Anyway, this is Lieutenant Emma Sheen, the best character in the show. Trust me, I will not let you forget that she is best girl. Then, our old friend, Captain Bright, makes his presence known. So Jared pisses off because the one thing he gets right in this is that there is an AUG attack going on. In the skies, the AUG engages the Titans' mobile suits, which in this particular case are Gym 2s. The RMS-179 Gym 2 is, as you'd expect it to be, a successor to the Gym. This particular mobile suit honestly is just as humble as the original, but a bit more advanced. The old beam spray gun was traded out for a beam rifle that it could handle because the power generator has been upgraded. It also has enhanced sensors, improved verniers, you can see them on the legs there, and overall was an improvement over the Gym. The problem was, admittedly, that this suit was only a minor improvement from suits developed around 0085, making the model honestly outdated by the time that this story takes place. Weapons-wise, aside from the aforementioned beam rifle, it also had 60mm Vulcans in the head, natch, a single beam saber, a hyper bazooka that it could use, and could also equip the same bullpup machine gun and Gym rifle that was standard issue on the Gym Quell. Hell, just about anything that the Gym Quell could equip, the Gym 2 can as well, on top of having a hardpoint shield. Unfortunately for the Titans, the Rick DS basically outperforms the Gym 2 in about every single way. I kid you not, in this sequence, we see the AUG pilots, all of whom are one-year war veterans from Zeon, make absolute fools out of the Titans. As we see in another spot, Captain Bask Ohm, Fleet Commander Jamaicon Danigan, and Lieutenant Franklin Bidan of the Titans are bickering over the attack. And yes, if you're wondering, Franklin Bidan is both Camille's father and fat. I don't like this guy. I'm going to insult him a lot. Regardless, as Titan mobile suits rain from the sky with complete embarrassment, we find out, as Fa finds her mother, that an evacuation's been ordered. On top of that, apparently the colony was given zero say in being turned into a Titan's base, a way to win over hearts and minds. Regardless, Kamille heads to the base where his father works and gets past the outer barricade since the guards are more worried about the air raid and they know his dad. Now, at this point we've been informed that there's exactly 3 Gundams. While Lieutenant Emma tells Bright that she's there to pilot one of them, it's at this point that they spot Kamille as he's hopping into that same mobile suit. By the way, one of those idiot Titans is perfectly fine with the kid taking the Gundam. Imagine being so stupid that you think it's okay for a 17-year-old to hop into one of the most advanced mobile suits that you have in that sector, assuming that he's going to fight on your side. Military intelligence are still 2 words that can't make sense, to quote the great philosopher Dave Mustaine. Now, for those curious as to how Kamille knows how to operate it, well, his father designed it. Plus, he stole data on the Gundam from his dad because Camille's a jerk. But Camille's dad's an even bigger jerk, so I'm okay with it. Now, even though the AUG has showed up, Kamille is more interested in bullying the MP that bullied him before, and might as well have given that guy a fucking wedgie with how petty he's being. Thing is, Quattro realizes that Camille's no enemy, which, of course, Kamille confirms. He then bullies the shit out of another Gundam unit, piloted by a guy named Kakrikon Kakuler. I just want to mention real quick that Jared and this guy bullied Kamille over his name when you've got a buddy named Kakrikon Kakuler. Look, Kamille is kind of a girly name, but Kakrikon? And look at his stupid face. Look at his stupid hair. So, he deservedly gets bullied out of the Gundam that he's piloting, and the AUG moves to retreat with 2 of the mobile suits. At this point, Bright confronts Bascom over the fact that the tests of the Mark II were being done in a civilian colony, since obviously they'd be a target, and it obviously puts civilians at risk. I mean, we literally saw Fa almost get killed trying to save her mom. So what does Bask do? Punches Bright in the face, and then as Bright continues to protest, he just has his cronies beat him up. Now keep in mind, they're doing this to a superior officer, and a hero of the 1-year war, which is something that, to my recollection, Bask Ohm isn't. Ohm served during the 1-year war, but he sure as shit wasn't, I don't know, the biggest hero captain of the fucking Federation. Anyway, Lieutenant Emma happens to be in the room as this is going on, and she isn't pleased with what's happening here. As for Kamille and the AUG pilots, they manage to escape the colony. The thing is, the Titans are waiting for them in a brand new suit with another familiar face. This machine is called a Hyzak. The RMS-106 Hyzak is, as you can tell, a successor to the Zaku II. Developed at Anaheim Electronics, likely by former Zeonic engineers, this mobile suit was meant to be another option as a general-use grunt suit for both the Titans, who use this typical green paint job you see here, but also the normal Earth Federation forces, who use a blue paint job. As you'd expect, this thing has much better specs than the Zaku II, and is also beam weapon capable, unlike its predecessor. It also uses the same alloy that the Gundam Mark II does, but like I mentioned earlier, it's not really anything to write home about. It's more of a statement about how poor the Mark II's armor is than how good the Hyzak's is. Even so, the suit does perform quite well for a grunt suit. Weaponry-wise, it primarily would use a 120mm machine gun and a heat hawk. However, it could use a beam rifle, a beam saber, 2 3-tube missile pods that could be attached to the hip armor, and even a large mega particle cannon called a mega launcher, but that had to be used with a team. Now, one thing we hear right out of the gate is that Jared is not trained on a Hyzak, but like an idiot, he decides to fight anyway and then gets the leg blown off his suit because Jared is a failure. He and his boys then get toasted by support fire coming from the Argama, which is the flagship of the AUG. So at this point, not only did a few mobile suits make the Titans look like a joke, they also snagged 2 or 3 Gundams that were built on Gryps, and got embarrassed by a 17-year-old. Lol. Lamau even. Now at this point, we find out that Luna 2 has deployed a ship to reinforce the Gryps with more forces, with the one notable pilot being Lieutenant Commander Lila Mila Rira. Yes, that's a mouthful. With a mobile suit that I'll break down once we head into combat. As for the Titans, they're sending Bright off with a message for Jamitov Hyman, plus more abuse because that's totally not going to bite them in the ass in the future. No. As for the AUG, we finally get to see the Argama, and for the first time in a while, we get to do a breakdown of a ship. The Argama-class carrier was originally designed at the Sweetwater colony by Anaheim Electronics, with funding from the AUG, and was inspired by the Pegasus-class ships of the 1-year war. Now, the one thing that this ship does differently, instead of having a rotating block inside of the ship to simulate gravity, instead, when it's out of combat, the residential modules will extend outwards and then rotate to simulate gravity. The Argama-class ships also have retractable bridges so that there's not a glaring weak spot whenever they enter combat. As for weaponry, it has 4 single-barreled cannons, a pair of megaparticle cannons, multiple missile launchers, and anti-air laser guns. Though the Argama is its own class of ship, this ship is also just called the Argama. There would be later ships that would follow a similar design. Plus, when we get to Double Zeta, we'll talk about the upgrades that this ship gets as well. Now, on the Argama, Kamille is being debriefed by Commodore Blex Forer, Captain Henkin Beckener, another Federation veteran of the One-Year War, and of course Lieutenant Quattro. We're also introduced to another pilot on the Argama, Ensign Recco Alland. At this point, the Argama is attacked by the ship that we saw earlier, with a pretty neat-looking mobile suit, called the Garibaldi Beta. The RMS-117 Garibaldi Beta is the descendant of the Garibaldi Alpha, a suit originally featured in MSX, which was a sequel to the popular Mobile Suit Variations series of books. Like many suits around this time, this particular grunt suit was basically just an improvement on its predecessor, with better armor on the head, shoulders, legs, and waist. But believe it or not, this suit is actually a descendant of both the Gyan and the Gelgoog from the One-Year War, standing around the same height as the Gelgoog, but being much sleeker. The thing is, its performance is compared to that of the Hyzak and the Gem 2, and we've seen how those are working out so far. Regardless, it carries a beam saber, a hardpoint mounted shield that can have missile launchers on the underside, a beam rifle, and a signal flare launcher in its head. Plus, admittedly, I think it's got a pretty snazzy paint job. Anyway, we're introduced to Astanaj, who is the head mechanic of the Argama. Not much to say about him right now, except that Astanaj is a very reliable and nice guy, and you're never going to have anything mean to say about him, at least not in my opinion. Unless you're just a jerk or something. Or a Titan. Not that there's a difference. Either way, there's also a substantially large ship in development at Gryps as well, so they're going to be performing more operations soon. Kamille also shares the knowledge that he has about what Titan's development is looking like. Specifically, that the next MS that they plan on developing will have more Xeon tech. Over with the Titans in the Federation, the Titans have grabbed Camille's mom and dad, and the Federation moved to attack the Argama. After telling Lila to fuck off, her and Quattro get into it, and so the battle commences. As for Camille's mom and dad, we get spousal abuse, after we find out that Camille's father is cheating on his wife. Classy. Anyway, the fight commences between the AUG and the Federation, with the Federation retreating after Quattro drops one of the Garibaldi suits. Even so, Blex and Henkin figure out that the Titans are going to be coming. So the Titans move to negotiate for the return to the Gundam Mark IIs, with Lieutenant Emma deploying in the remaining Mark II. She heads to the Argama with a white flag, backed up by another mobile suit, to negotiate. What Commodore Blex sees in the letter that Lieutenant Emma brings to them absolutely horrifies him, and Emma is confused by the horror since she didn't know what was going on. What she sees shocks her. The Titans mean to kill Camille's parents. Side note, Bask Ohm is a fucking moron. Now, we already knew that from Stardust Memory, but I have to stress that here, because did he honestly think that Lieutenant Emma wasn't going to read the note or they weren't going to fucking show her? I'm assuming that Bask just assumes nobody has any morals because he's a corrupt dickhead. Regardless, we saw that Emma Sheen is completely disgusted with Bask's tactics. Kamille overhears the conversation about his parents being used as hostages. At this point, they detect a capsule, and it contains Camille's mother. Remember in my Zeta review how I mentioned how fucking dark Zeta gets? Yeah, this is the 3rd episode that we're on right now. Anyway, Kamille sneaks past everyone and gets into the Gundam Unit 3 to go rescue his mom. Jared, without orders to fire on mobile suits, only orders to fire on the Argama if they attack, fires on Kamille while he moves to the capsule to save his mother. At this point, the fucking failure keeps firing and pops the capsule, exposing Camille's mother to the vacuum of space and killing her instantly.
Why wasn't there any kind of explosion?
Because nobody told you it was a bomb, you fucking idiot! Not to mention, if it was a bomb dummy, it wouldn't be planted right there. They would have it in a position where you could probably use it very easily against the Argama, but they didn't. They placed it away from you and Lieutenant Emma. And you opened fire on the bomb when the most you would have done is blow up one of the mobile suits that you're there to negotiate for, you fucking stooge! Now, To be fair, and this is the one time I'm going to be fair to Jared Mesa here, both Jared and Emma went out there without direct orders or details on everything. So I can't sit here and tell you that Jared is a murderer yet. In most courts here in the United States, which I'm just kind of using as a base because obviously I live here, that's what I'm most familiar with, Jared would be court-martialed in a government that makes sense for what happened, absolutely. But he would not be charged with murder. He would likely be charged with involuntary manslaughter. And I know he would be charged in a government that makes sense because Kamille's mother was a fellow officer. She was a lieutenant in the Titans. Now, the real person to blame for the death of Kamille's mom, who honestly just seemed like a nice lady who loved her son, is Bask Ohm. It was his idea to put her in that capsule and put her in the line of fire. He knew exactly what he was doing. Either way, Kamille starts beating up Jared with Quattro and Emma trying to break him up. At this point, Lila takes advantage and attacks, and a brawl basically breaks out, with at one point Kamille quite literally donkey-punching Jared's Hyzak. Eventually Emma manages to get Lila to back off, and Quattro recommends that they give back the Gundams. The fact is that they're about to be overwhelmed numbers-wise, which is a common thing you're going to see whenever you're dealing with the Titans. Now, since Quattro and Emma literally have to pull Kamille off of Jared, we're counting this one as a win for Kamille. So, in one-on-one fights, we're going to try to count all of these. It is 1-0 in Camille's favor. Regardless, the ceasefire is ordered and Emma and the Titans take back the Mark IIs. Back with the Titans, Emma smacks Kamille out of his mental funk, understandable mental funk on top of that, and asks if his mom really was in the capsule. Kamille states that Unit 3's fingers will tell the story, and sure enough, Emma finds blood on them. Oh, and Camille's dipshit dad is here, and Kamille just throws the whole "you're cheating on my mom" thing in his dad's face. Even after getting slapped, the truth about what's going on, and that Franklin was, a hostage, gets him a bit pissed. Not that he does anything with it. Oh, and Jared's here to make the situation worse by fake apologizing for Camille's mom's death. But Kamille switches the situation by rubbing the fact that he's a better pilot than Jared in his face. One thing you're going to notice about this is that Jared is a character with a lot of insecurities. One of the big ones is the fact that he sucks. So get used to people telling him he sucks throughout this whole show. On the bridge, Bask says he's going to give Emma control of the next mission and capture one of the Argama's MS with the Mark IIs. Jared wants on the mission and to pilot a Gundam, which Bask flat out scoffs at because Jared sucks. Lieutenant Emma and Lila's unit are going to be on the mission with the sortie being in Emma's hands. Now, as you'd expect, this backfires because Emma is sick of the bullshit, and she's taking both of the Bidans with her. So Kamille busts up Kakrakon's face and knocks out the other Titan's pilot too. Again, keep in mind, these are elite Federation special forces getting beat up by a 17-year-old. After that's done, they also bully Jared and the other Titans as they take off. Natch. Gee, it's almost like acting like a bunch of thugs and taking hostages was bad for morale, and you just lost one of your best pilots. Lila's team is in pursuit, but they're not able to do much before the AUG gets there with the Rick Diaz's to escort the Mark IIs back to the AUG. It's like they're playing tag or something. As such, Kamille, his dad, and Lieutenant Emma are safe on the Argama. As for the Titans, Bask is obviously pissed and wants to try and cut off the head of the snake as soon as he can, putting Jamaicon in charge as Bask returns to Gryps. In the hangar of the Argama, Camille's dad is being a douche and snags Astanaj so he can still a Rick Diaz, complete the mission that Emma was originally tasked with, and then advance himself in the Titans. Then he knocks Astanaj into space and nabs the suit. Don't worry about Astanaj though, they do get him. Roberto and Apolli head out in pursuit, with Rekko having to keep Kamille from jumping in the Mark II, now painted in AUG colors. Now we get to see something that you don't see often. Char Aznable in a Gundam. Not only a Gundam, but a Gundam painted very, very similar to the original Gundam that he fought so much. Only, for those curious about if you're going to paint a master grade of this, it's a navy blue, not necessarily like black on the chest. Just trust me on that. Now on the Argama, it's pretty much an open secret between Blex and Henkin that Quattro and Char Aznable are the same guy. The Titans pick up on the MS heading towards them, with Jared and other Titans members heading out in Hyzaks to respond. Now as for Franklin, Char and his wingmen manage to outmaneuver him, but they get flanked by the Titans, with Quattro taking a hit in the leg, blowing it clean off. This is what I meant about the Mark II not having that great of armor. It can literally just get torn to pieces if you're not careful. Luckily, it's a fast mobile suit, but even so, it is what it is. Gundanium alloy, like what the Rick Diaz have, would probably be better in this particular, instance. Oh, one thing to mention about this entire sequence I'm about to talk about, half the time that it's going on, Franklin is just fantasizing about his side piece. This dude fucking sucks. God, I feel bad for Kamille. He seems like he had a great mom, just who got too absorbed in her work. But man, his dad was a pile of crap. Regardless, on the Argama, Kamille grabs one of the other Gundams that Astanaj just took an arm off of to go pursue his dad, and shockingly, Ensign Rekawa just signs off on it. Battle intensifies, and when Kamille catches up to his dad, he actually just holds him up at gunpoint, and then, shockingly, Dad starts blasting, so they start blasting at each other. Also, lull at Camille's dad asking if he's always been a good father to him. No. As the battle goes on, Franklin takes a hit to the abdomen of the Rick Diaz, which isn't going to instantly kill the pilot because the cockpit is in the head. But regardless, even though he does manage to get out of the suit, the explosion seemingly kills him, because, for those who don't know, an explosion at that range will basically tear you apart inside, and even if it didn't kill him, it flings him so hard out into space that there's no way you're going to get him. The Titans at that point signaled to withdraw, and now Kamille Bidan is an orphan. At this point, the Argama's plan is to head to Earth. Now, as for the AUG, Emma Sheen is now a member of it on probationary watch. As you'd expect, Kamille is about as pissed as you would expect anyone to be, whether you're 17 or 70 losing both of your parents. Thing is, Quattro is pretty blunt about what Camille's only path forward is. Make sure the next generation doesn't suffer the same problem. It's at this point that he opens up a bit about his own past, being coy about the fact that he's Shar, but basically using his own experience, given that he went through something kind of similar, to try and get Kamille on the right track, to kind of inspire the kid, but it doesn't work. But if nothing else, he did try. The fact of the matter is that the kid's grieving. All you can really do is just wait for him to get out of his system. Because, speaking as someone, I haven't lost any parents, I'm not that old, but having lost grandparents that I was really close to, hearing anything from anybody was the last thing I wanted. And I don't really think that Camille's being bratty for this. Some people do. It's like, well, you've never lost a parent, let alone never lost them in such a tragic way. So I don't want to hear it. This is character development, and this does start the path of Kamille changing as a person as the story goes along. Anyway, Jared is over with the normal Federation pilots, and they mock him for being a walking failure with stupid hair. God, I could only imagine what it would be like if Jared was on Twitter. Man, he'd get roasted daily. Anyway, we also see that Jamaicon has only a rough idea of what's going on and where the AUG is headed next. Now, on the Argama, we see Kamille, the next day after all the stuff that went on, is working on mobile suit design. And whether he realizes it or not, during this process, he fixes a massive problem for the AUG and their Zeta project by effectively using data from the Rick Diaz and the Gundam Mark II to do the early plotting for what would end up becoming the Zeta Gundam. Astanaj compliments him on his work, but Kamille is not one to take credit. Side note, I plan on doing a separate video specifically about the mobile suit that we didn't get for Quattro called the Delta Gundam to talk about exactly why Kamille doing what he did here is such a big deal. Now, regardless, Kamille gets nervous about Rekawa talking to Quattro because he's a kid, he's got crushes, there's pretty girls everywhere, it is what it is. And he goes down to talk to Lieutenant Emma instead, mostly curious about how the hell she ended up with the Titans. And sadly, we don't get to hear the story, because he heads out after Rekawa gives him a disc he dropped. He's nervous. He's a kid. Rekawa then chats with Emma for a bit about AUG strategy, and during this conversation she discusses the Colony 30 incident, which I talked about in the last video, but I'll reiterate. This is basically Emma being told about the Side 1 incident. Colony 30 is the one that got gassed. Now, Blex is smart about this, because they're listening in on the conversation. She is on probation, I get it. Let's just hope that they, turn the camera off when she undresses. Or maybe they don't and they sell it on OnlyFans. Who knows? Regardless, Blex knows that Emma has potential to be a huge asset for the AUG as a pilot. Because not only is she skilled enough for them to basically say, hey, you get to pilot a Gundam during her time on the Titans. On top of that, she's a moral person. So they know that she's not going to go back to them. At least, provided they don't screw up. But what he considers while they're having this discussion is taking her to Side 1 to actually show her what happened so she knows the depth of this. Now, back with the Titans, we see Jamaicon trying to recruit, and we see a bunch of what the designation of being a Titan gets them, which, oddly enough, I don't think I've talked about yet. Basically, if you are a Titans member, you're treated as if you are one rank higher than what you are, including the benefits of that higher rank, like more paid holidays, etc. Lila, on the other hand, uses it to roast Jared because he didn't work for that, but Jamaicon still puts Jared in charge because that 5 head he has doesn't contain a bigger brain, but also Jared is actually going to be considered a higher rank than her. Lieutenant Commander is only 1 rank above Lieutenant in the Federation military, whereas Jared would actually be treated like a commander. Now, she still mocks him, then Jared tries to hit her and gets beat up for his troubles because Jared sucks. And then Lila calls him out on the fact that he sucks. Funnily enough, though, Jared is willing to admit that he sucks for a second, swallow his pride, and try to learn from Lila on how to become a better pilot. Now, the next move for the AUG is an attack on the Titans' defense satellites while they prep Ensign Rekkawa to head to Earth on an assignment. Quattro launches in the Mark II with Apolli and Roberto on his wing as usual. Unfortunately for them, the Titans are in pursuit. Now, even with a Gym 2 on him, Quattro wrecks the satellite without much issue. The thing is, they still need to send out Rekkawa in her shuttle, so Kamille is wanting to cover her in his one-armed Gundam after he had, eyed her boobs earlier. As the units clash, Jared gets a view of Lila's skills and confidence in battle as she manages to take out Gym 2s from the other AUG ship that was with them called the Mont Blanc. Now, I do a breakdown, but this is just a Salamis-class ship, specifically called the Salamis Kai. But the only real difference is that instead of a normal Salamis, this can carry up to 4 mobile suits. It's not really a huge upgrade. It's effectively the same ship with a hangar bay. Either way, Lila takes out the Mont Blanc as well, showing that she is quite a talented pilot. Now on Earth, during this battle, we see an old friend. Amuro Ray is here. Everybody clap. Now what's wild about this is that Amuro is at his pretty swank house on Earth, and he can sense the battle in space. But he also feels during it that he's being called to. Something to think about. Also, Jared and Kamille get into it again, and as you would expect, Jared loses. So now it's 2-0 in Camille's favor because Jared still sucks. Either way, Rekkawa manages to get to Earth as sparks and trails of light are seen as the remnants of the Mont Blanc are sadly incinerated in the atmosphere. Back with the Titans, I feel like a broken record in saying that Jared's getting mocked for sucking, but that's what's happening. Thing is, Lila does give the heads up that the Argama is not to be underestimated, and that the crew may be new types. Though she's not completely wrong, there's at least one confirmed on board. Jamaicon says that new types are media hype. As for the AUG, they're making Kamille an official pilot given his skills that he's displayed thus far. Camille's not sold on it, but he and Quattro bond over the soldiering aspect. Now, quick note for future reference. You've probably noticed that the AUG does field their own Gym 2s. If you're curious how you can tell AUG model from Federation, here we go. The AUG model on the left has a green chest. The Federation model has a red one. That's it. How did both sides get them? Well, that's actually even simpler to explain. Anaheim Electronics sells to both sides of the war. Back with the Titans, Lila pushes for the idea of attacking the AUG from 2 sides, and Jamaicon relents. She also gets flirtatious with Jared for some strange reason. Thing is, she was right to make the call considering they managed to get a bead on the Argama around Side 1. Oh, the call about the strategy, not flirting with Jared. That's never a good idea. Now, what Blex mentioned about Emma seeing Side 1 for herself is coming to fruition here. Kamille comes to Colony 30 as well, and it's about what you would expect. All of the dead here are mummified. It wasn't just rioters that were killed. Everyone was killed, and the bodies were just left there to rot. As you'd imagine, Emma and Kamille are mortified by it. Unfortunately for the AUG, Lila and a couple of her men are on their tail. Now, when Emma and Quattro are talking, we start to see his father's philosophy start to rear its head. We talked about it in my 1-year war vids, but I might as well bring up the philosophy of Aerism. I mispronounced it in the original vid. And its popularity among Spacenoids. The general idea is, one, that humanity is meant to leave Earth and head to the stars as it continues to evolve. Though he doesn't try to shove the ideology down Emma's throat, it is worth noting that Quattro still held that particular belief of his father, and it's one that we'll continue to talk about up until a certain point within the Universal Century, around Hathaway's Flash. He obviously believes in new type theories still, considering, well, he is one. Hardly a theory at this point. While exploring the colony and stumbling on another sad sight of a dead mother and their child, Kamille gets confronted by Lila, then held at gunpoint. As this goes on, Lila uses Kamille as a shield during what can best be called an aggressive philosophical debate, where Quattro basically proposes that the Earth Federation is becoming the next zombie family. I mean, given that you're inside of a colony that was hit with G3 gas, which, might I remind you all, is the exact same kind that Zeon used on Island Ifish at Side 2. You know, the one where they lied to Seema Garahau? Yeah, the parallels are there. I think it's sort of self-evident. Lila gets away, and everyone gets back to their ships and mobile suits. Kamille, of course, heads out in the Mark II, with the Rick Diaz suits covering his back. Now, oddly enough, during the fight, Kamille tries to talk Lieutenant Lila down, but has no luck. At this point, Kamille just toasts one of Lila's wingmen like he's nothing. The Titans, of course, are aware of the battle, but they want to wait until the AUG uses up their resources, much to Jared's chagrin. Oddly enough, 0083 paralleled this in the end of Operation Stardust, if you remember. So effectively speaking, when it comes to the canon of Titans strategy, they don't come rushing in to aid their allies. They wait till their allies expend everybody else's stuff, then they try to come in and mop up because they're bullies. During the battle, we get to see how good Kamille actually is, though, as he outmaneuvers Lila and then kills her. Jared has himself a cry, while the AUG cheers Camille's success, even though Camille's still pretty reserved about the whole thing. Another quick side note. You all know I don't like Zeta's new translation movies, but I have to say one thing I do love is in the fight between Lila and Kamille, it has Kamille literally duplicate the iconic Char kick. Nice little ode to the mentor here. After Side 1, the Argama's headed for the moon, and Camille's being a big baby, while Emma and Quattro pry about Camille's feelings about becoming a pilot. Camille's throwing up walls here about the fact that he had to kill Lila, plus being fluffed up as a new type. Emma, as you'd expect, sees right through him. As they're going through the halls, Emma tells Kamille about the fact that she's actually met Amuro Ray, the person that Kamille is constantly being compared to, in the past, when he helped her out with some car trouble. Her theory is that, after meeting Amuro, she's of the opinion that Amuro wants to be out there in space, in an environment like the Argama. At that point, there's also some back and forth over whether or not Emma has met Char as well, which is kind of an odd back and forth, but it's still hinting at maybe Quattro is Char, maybe he's not, even though we, the audience, know he is. At this point, they get attacked. Jared heads out in a Garibaldi Beta to try and find the Argama and the AUG's hiding spot, and both Kamille and Quattro head out. Now, we've got another Kamille and Jared fight here. Quattro moves in to back him up, but other Titan suits come in to reinforce Jared. Kamille and Jared go toe-to-toe for a bit, with Jared managing to take out Camille's rifle. All in all, the two actually have a really good fight here, where Jared is actually able to match Camille strike for strike. I am going to give this fight a draw, though, in our counter, though the Mark II's damaged leg could have been something that gave Jared an edge as it went on, but we never got to see it, so that's where I'm leaving it. Now, on Amon City, on the moon, Quattro meets up with someone who knew him from his Zeon days, who gives him info on Axis. Specifically, it's moving and headed towards the Earth's sphere. On top of that, Basque is also moving the colony of Green Noah 2, which we also know as Gryps, though we don't know why yet. He's also told to meet a guy named Wong Lee from Anaheim Electronics at McDaniel's, a burger joint. Now, I hear McDaniel's isn't half bad. The number 3 is pretty good specifically. It's called a Bernie with fries.
Boo this man!
Sorry. Anyway, as for the Titans, they're getting shortchanged on supplies because lol. Oh, and Jamaicon throws Jared in the brig because also lol. Before that, though, Kakarkon lets Jared know that he might be headed to face the Argama, and he'll tell them to get Jared out if he needs help. Now, out on the moon's surface, Kamille and Emma are chatting it up as they're hanging out in a jeep, but they're found by Kakarkon's team. As for Wong, he wants to know why Quattro's against an attack on Jaburo, which he explains that A, they'd be caught in a gravity well and be at a disadvantage, and B, Gryps is the juicier target to him, considering that's where the Titans seem to be dug in like ticks. Wong disagrees, wanting to go for the head of the Federation rather than the head of the Titans. It's at this point that we hear Karaba mentioned, the Earth's support for the Aeug, but no more than a name drop. As you'd expect, the Titans attack Kamille and Emma on foot. Also, I love how in the English dub, Emma calls Kakrakan Cockrakon. I find it funny. Either way, a defunct Haro manages to save Camille's life by absolute chance, and the gunfight continues with Kamille managing to get back in their Jeep, grabbing Emma and getting out of there. It's at this point we see some activity on Earth. Specifically, we see Ensign Rekoa as she's scouting out the area around Jaburo in South America. Unfortunately for her, she's caught by Federation soldiers, but gets some help from none other than Kai Shiden. Yeah, he gets them to back off and reveals that now, Kai is no longer in the military, but is a freelance journalist. Well, good for him, I guess. As for the Titans, we find out that the Earth's been skimping on supplies for everyone in space, not just the Titans. Jamaicon, being dumb, accuses the Federation officer he's speaking with of supporting the Aeug, in which she states the obvious. If we were, we'd have shot you, you dumbass. You can tell I don't like Jamaicon very much either. We find Kamille fixing up the Haro, and it calls Kamille Amuro. So yep, this is the Haro. What are the odds? Also, Kamille gets slapped for being a little shit. Now at this point on Earth, Kai tells Rekoa that Jaburo is no longer the Earth's headquarters, but the problem that they have is that it would take 4 days for Rekoa to get back to her shuttle to let the Aeug know, and they're actually invading in 1 day. So what Kai proposes is that they use Jaburo's equipment. Regardless, Emma at this point drags Kamille to the meeting with Wong, who just, when he sees him, fucking smacks him in the face and starts beating the shit out of him for being late. A fistfight happens with plenty of smack talk, but Wong wins, and Wong does actually have a point. Kamille has a job to do, and he needs to stay focused. At the same time, Wong is a douchebag for giving a concussion to one of your best pilots. After he wakes up, Camille's confused as all hell about why he got no backup from Quattro and Emma. Kamille then refuses to suit up, and Emma just smacks him. Quattro then gives advice that I swear I've heard from several military vets at this point, including my own father. And yes, when I was being a little shit as a kid, he told me this.
If you want to stop getting hit, then just stop screwing up.
Ultimately, Kamille needs to stop acting like a kid and just be responsible. That's what's being asked of him here. Now, at this point, we get to see what the resupply of the Aeug includes, and it is a beauty. We see Quattro hopping out of a gold and blue Gundam-looking mobile suit. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Hyakushiki. The MSN 00100 Hyakushiki is 21.4 meters of gold and blue, and one of Casval Daikun's most iconic suits. The term Hyakushiki means Type 100 in Japanese, because its developer wanted to create a mobile suit whose design would last for 100 years. In-universe developer, not the actual, creator of the mobile suit in real life. Part of the Zeta project, it was originally designed as the Delta Gundam. More on that another time, but during initial testing, they couldn't make a transformation gimmick into a mobile armor form, which was called the Wave Rider, work properly. So, after being given data from the Mark II, Anaheim reworked it into the non-transforming high-performance Hyakushiki, which maintained some of the same aesthetics of the Delta Gundam, like the binders on its back. As for the gold on it, this is an anti-beam coating that gives extra protection from beam weaponry, on top of it using the same Gundarium Gamma alloy that a Rick Diaz uses. As for the weapons, it uses 60mm Vulcan cannons in the head, Natch, 2 beam sabers, mounted on its back, an EPAC beam rifle, a 300mm clay bazooka, which is the same one that the Rick Diaz has, which is basically standard armament for Aeug mobile suits. If you hear me mention a clay bazooka, it's the same one that the Rick Diaz uses. And it also could use a hardpoint mounted shield if it so chose, but Quattro never does. Spoilers, I guess. As for the head, it actually had a dual eye system like a Gundam does, but also had something called the IDE system, which means the Image Directive Encode, that allows its aim to be incredibly precise. When it's in use, you'll actually see scanning patterns across the visor instead of its eyes. In the new translation film, you would also see the Hyakushiki flash this whenever Quattro would speak as well. It also uses sealant launchers in the hands like the Rick Diaz as well, which can launch sealant, which, duh, but can also launch out flares and even dummy mobile suits. Now, some of you might be asking, Is this a Gundam? The best answer I have is kinda. The Zeta Project was responsible for creating several Gundams, but not all of them looked like Gundams or were called Gundams past a certain point, like the Rick Diaz technically being the Gamma Gundam. Well, not technically, it is, but they never call it a Gundam, they just call it the Rick Diaz. The Delta Gundam, which the Hyakushiki was based off of, never actually was produced. There's no physical Delta Gundam ever. Well, not until many years later, where the design was remade into a different concept called the Delta Plus, which is a Gundam, and is called as such in Unicorn Gundam, which is where it debuted. There's also another one called the Gundam Delta Kai that also came from that used prototype fin funnels, a technology we're going to talk about way later. The Hyakushiki, though, even though it is related to these two mobile suits, is not called a Gundam. So that brings into the question, what the fuck does Gundam even mean? For better or worse, Gundams are meant to be experimental high-performance units that are both meant to do big damage as combat machines, but also test out experimental weapons and concepts that could then be turned into mass-production mobile suits that we would see later on. The original Gundam was meant to create a general-purpose, mid-range mobile suit that tested if beam weaponry could work on a smaller scale. It succeeded, and thus we got the GIMs, all of them, which of course follow the RX-78 line. There were other suits that weren't Gundams, but were on par with the performance of the RX-78 too, like the GIM Sniper 2. The Hyakushiki, for me at least, is in the area of the GIM Sniper 2, in the sense that it doesn't qualify as a Gundam, per se. But it's so high-performing that in the right hands, you can do damage like a Gundam can do. And its performance is similar to that of other Gundams. It is easily comparable to the Gundam Mark II. It might actually be the better machine. Now, for example, what I mean by this, if we go back and look at 0080 War in the Pocket, we see the GIM Sniper 2, again, a mobile suit that is comparable to the RX-78 2 in regards of performance, get absolutely fucking owned. Like it wasn't even there by a Xeon suit. But in the hands of the White Dingo team down on Earth, the GIM Sniper 2 was one of the most fearsome units you could run across in the field. The same idea with the Hyakushiki. It is effectively, as I see it, a cousin to the Gundam series of mobile suits. It has a lot of the same design mechanics to it. But it's not alone in this, in the sense that the Nero mobile suit in Gundam Sentinel was based on another Gundam from the Zeta Project. And then the Riggsy from Char's Counterattack and the Riesel from Gundam Unicorn are actually attempts to mass produce a Gundam that we will see later on, known as the Zeta Gundam. Now, quick side note. I've mentioned it before, I will mention it again. I do plan on doing a video talking about how effectively the Zeta Gundam changed how the Federation looked at mobile suit production, but that's a whole nother video. Anyway, Quattro gets Apolli and Roberto caught up on things, and the Titans end up spotting them. We also see that Apolli and Roberto got new Rick Diaz units as well in the red Quattro color. Kamille then hops into the Mark II with Haro to catch up to them. Now, while Jamaicon is talking trash to people, we see another new mobile suit on the deck of the Titan's ship that he's on. This mean-looking Zeonic-style mobile suit is called the Marasai. The RMS-108 Marasai is one of the earliest second-generation suits ever made. Obviously created with principles from Zeon, this suit has similarities to suits such as the Zaku 2 and the Goof in its design philosophy. The mono eye, the shoulder shield, the spiked shoulder, etc. However, it also utilized technologies that we saw in Gundams, such as the movable frame from the Mark II, plus this actually uses Gundanium alloy for the armor, instead of the alloys that are used in the Mark II and the Hyzak, which aren't as durable. On top of that, this 20.5 meter monster was also lighter than the Hyzak on top of it, also sporting a much more powerful reactor. Armament-wise, it used twin Vulcan guns in the head, I'm assuming 60mm, an EPAC beam rifle, a shoulder-mounted shield which had two beam sabers attached on the back side of the shield, and could also use weaponry that a later mobile suit called the Gabfleet could use, in a long-range sniper rifle called a Fedayeen rifle, and what's called a Sea Serpent, which is a grappling weapon capable of delivering electrical shocks to enemy units. Anyway, Jamaicon is pressing the Anaheim representative, but the rep doesn't fold because Jamaicon sucks. Basically, the idea is that, yeah, we are going to continue to supply you because the Federation pays us, dummy. Do we think you're necessarily going to win? Ha! Let's just wait till the check clears. Out in the field, Kakracon starts prepping for combat as Kamille meets up with Quattro, and they've arrived at Granada on the moon. The plan is simple. They need to capture a Titan's vessel. That's the mission. It's here that we actually see a Federation-colored Hyzak for the first time. There it is. Looks kind of neat. Anyway, Kamille and Quattro head in for close quarters combat, and the Federation officers try to counterattack. Oh, and Kamille forgot to take the safety off his gun, and he freaks out. Yeah. As for the Titans, they attack the hangar where the AUG is stationed simultaneously, and Kamille actually senses it. Quattro, however, doesn't, and keeps up the pressure on the Federation. Emma and other AUG pilots over at the Argama try to launch to hold off the Titans, with Emma taking out another Rick Diaz. After the gunfight, Quattro realizes that the Titan's strategy that Camille's telling him makes perfect sense, and he realizes that Camille's actually right. So what happens is Kamille takes off in the Mark II to back up Emma, who is mixing it up with Kakrakan. Believe it or not, we see another mobile suit here that makes a cameo appearance, but we're going to break it down anyway. This is the humble, yet awesome, Nemo. Or Nemo. The MSA-003 Nemo is a humble successor to the Gym 2 and the Gym Sniper 2. These grunt suits are specifically made for the AUG as sort of a Gym 2.5, in the same way that the Hyzak and the Marasai are kind of attempts at being a Zaku 2.5. This one also sports an internal movable frame like the Mark II and the Hyaku Shiki do. As such, it's a very versatile suit. And one benefit that you get from a movable frame that I admittedly forgot to mention earlier is the fact that this thing can be used just about anywhere without needing special equipment. You can use it in the Arctic, you can use it in space, so on and so forth. Its thruster layout is also based on the Gym Sniper 2, with some of the engineers of that suit having worked on the Nemo, thus the similarities. It also uses Gundarium alloy, which of course is cost effective for Anaheim at the time, because they were using the same type of material for the Marasais. This is also probably why we see them rolled out at the same time. As for weapons, we got our 60mm Vulcan guns, we have twin beam sabers mounted on the lower back beneath the thrusters, plus it can use the clay bazooka, it can use a 170mm cannon, similar to the 180mm in the one-year war that we saw the Gundam ground type use, but the magazine feed on the 170mm is underneath the gun. Plus it uses its own beam rifle, can use a 90mm bullpup machine rifle, a gym rifle, the gun cannon's sniper rifle as well, and of course it has a hardpoint shield. Personally, I also really like its paint scheme. If you're a model kit builder like me and you want a fun grunt suit to customize, you can't go wrong with its master grade. It's pretty goddamn good. Back with the fight, it's pretty fierce, with Emma and Kakrakan going back and forth. Thing is, Emma tries to use cover to get the drop on him, but it gives away her position when she moves her bazooka just a little bit. At this point, she takes a hard hit and loses the arm of the Rick Diaz. However, she gets bailed out by Kamille, who takes over the fight on top of fighting another Hyzak simultaneously. He manages to drop one of them, and then Kakrakan flees. Emma and Kamille argue, with Kamille basically confirming to us in the audience that he's a new type like Amuro and Quattro, but as we saw in comparison senses-wise, he's much more sensitive to emotional pressure than Quattro is. As for Earth, Rekko and Kai have found Jaburo's entrance, and head to try and get a message to the AUG. Now at this point, the prep begins for the descent to Earth. Astanage lets Emma and Kamille know the AUG has completed a Wave Rider shuttle based on Camille's specs for the Zeta Gundam, which is still being worked on. As for the assault itself, according to Quattro, they'll be assaulting Jaburo with around 80 mobile suits and 10 ships. As for the Titans, they're still throwing a tantrum about Anaheim helping the AUG, and Jared's going to be able to sortie again with Kakrakan leading the squad. As the Argama leaves Granada, the two attack, backed by several Hyzak suits. Oh, and Wong eats shit. That's pretty great. Now, one note about this fight is we see the flechette rounds of the Mark II's bazooka in action. Goes without saying, as you can see, they have quite a spread. Another thing we also see is that Quattro actually spots a Titan pilot in a mobile suit from the original Gundam show's MSV book. But we've never broken this one down, so this is a Zaku. Specifically a Zaku reconnaissance type. The MS-06E Zaku Recon type is a variation of the Zaku 2, with specialized cameras meant to do, well, recon. It's kind of in the name. Now, if you're wondering why this is necessary, keep in mind that Minovsky particles exist. And with these things in the air, you can't really rely on your sensors as much. Rather, you have to use visual confirmation. Given that this is a Zaku 2 with a bunch of high magnification cameras on it, you can see how it could be a difference maker if used properly. Now, weapons-wise, it just carries a 120mm machine gun and a shield when it's deployed, though admittedly you could equip it with any Zaku 2 equipment. Thing is, this is a one-year war mobile suit, and that's a Hyaku Shiki. piloted by a guy who's totally not the Red Comet. I say that with my tongue buried firmly in the cheek on my face, and Quattro tackles the guy and kills him fast and quiet. Oh, we should probably talk about the Petite Mobiles too. The Petite Mobile is classified as a junior mobile suit, and these little guys are basically construction units. However, you can attach a hyper beam gun on them if you need a little firepower. More often than not, though, they weren't equipped with weapons, given that they were just civilian-use machines. I couldn't even find, like, a model number for them or anything. They're just called Petite Mobiles. As for the battle itself, Kamille fights both Jared and Kakrikon simultaneously, and manages to defeat Jared again, this time with a dust cloud combined with Flechette. Yeah, the idiot thinks that he knows what Camille's doing, charges into a cloud of dust, and literally eats Flechette round. He's so fucking stupid. Anyway, rack up another W for Kamille. What's hilarious about this win is that they actually had Kamille on the back foot with hit and run tactics. But Jared sucks. Now, Kakrikon fares a little better, but has to disengage when Wong, in a Petite Mobile, and Quattro join the fight to get Kamille and head back to the Argama, because the mission's more important than this little scuffle. At this point, it's all hands on deck for Jaburo, though a single mobile suit is spotted. We find out that this mobile suit is attacking a shuttle that has none other than Bright Noah on board. Immediately, Quattro and Kamille spring into action, with some new tech called the Mega Bazooka Launcher as well. Now, I talked about this when I broke down the Yakushiki. This is just that big-ass cannon I was talking about. Now, the mobile suit attacking this shuttle is one we haven't seen before, piloted by a man with purple hair. This is the man from Jupiter, Paptimus Scirocco, and he engages Kamille and Quattro once he sees them. Quattro fires the Mega Beam Cannon, but he's feeling a strange pressure that effectively makes him shake so much that you'd think he's absolutely fucking pants-shittingly scared of this guy, which we've literally never seen Char act this way, let's be honest. Now, I'll just tell you right now, spoilers, Scirocco's a new type, and he's a very powerful one. So Quattro misses him, but manages to drive him off. Now, on a positive note, they saved the civilian shuttle. Plus, you see something that you're not going to see every day. Quattro Bajeena finally meets one of the men that he chased during the 1-year war face-to-face, and finally gets to shake his hand. Kamille wants to shake Captain Bright's hand too, but he gets glomped on by Fa Yuri. This is cute, but bad news. Her parents have been taken by the Titans, and she was saved by Bright. Now, at some point I'm going to need to do a video on the Jupiter Energy Fleet and its significance in Gundam, but for now, I'll tell you guys just about Paptimus. His rank in the Titans is actually different depending on which version of Zeta you're watching. In the films, he's actually a colonel, but here on the show, he's a captain. Scirocco is almost a dark reflection of Kamille. Both of them have similarities in that they're both new types, very powerful ones, and both have mobile suit design chops. The fact is that the mobile suits that Scirocco uses in this show are ones that he designed, and on top of that, we also saw the psychic pressure that Quattro was being affected by. Now, the key spots that we notice where Kamille and Scirocco have major differences in how they're polar opposites of one another comes to how they interact with other people. As we see, Kamille is incredibly socially awkward, bordering on what a lot of people think is autism. Now, one thing that needs to be said about this, the whole thing about the translation of him saying, "I'm an autistic child," apparently that is a mistranslation, so here I am once again debunking urban legends in Gundam. But regardless, you can kind of see how people would assume that due to his antisocial nature and overall lack of charisma and ability to actually hold a decent conversation. I mean, if we made Kamille into a Dungeons & Dragons character, if he tried to do a charisma check, not only would he probably fail it, he would probably somehow consistently roll ones and find himself constantly getting into fights with people he's just trying to buy vegetables from. Meanwhile, as for Paptimus, he is ridiculously charismatic. Now, that's a major plot point as it goes on, but you just need to know that for now, that he's really good at manipulating people, especially women. Regardless, at this point of the story, change is going to happen. On the Argama, it's announced that Bright is going to be taking over the ship and command of it. Bright is also pretty pleased to see Aharo, and Fa is in charge of handing out meals, and she's worried that the Titans are going to target Mirai and her children. Now, one thing to mention about Bright is he doesn't think that this is the Haro, because Haros actually got sold as just a commercial item, and they all basically called people Amuro and Bright. But it could still be the original, you never really know. You'd have to find Tamino and see what he says about it. Regardless, in a one-on-one meeting later on with Quattro, Bright admits that he's worried that his family is at Jaburo. So what he does is he draws Quattro a map of the facility so he can find them and get them out of there during the operation. Now, some people are probably going to go, well, wait a minute. Quattro's been in Jaburo before. It could be assumed that buildings got moved around and things along those lines in the 7 years that he's been there. Regardless, as for Paptimus and the Federation, Paptimus is being a dick around them and their Hyzek units. He explains that the Masala is a unit that he developed, like I mentioned earlier, and he just attacked Bright's shuttle as a test. So let's talk about this big old thing. The PMX-000 Masala, as Pap Schmier just described, is a mobile suit of his design. The suit is notable in Gundam history, given that it is the first one that we see to successfully have the ability to change from a mobile suit to a mobile armor. The suit is also a Ben-Hur reference, with it being named after Ben-Hur's rival from the film. The thing is a speed demon, designed with Jupiter's gravity in mind. Made from Gundanium alloy, this thing stands just barely over 30 meters tall, weighing almost 90 tons at max weight. Now, though the max thrust is listed at being just over 1G, that's probably not accurate given the 6 rocket thrusters and 8 verniers it sports on its frame. I'm thinking it's probably around 1G in Jupiter's gravity. It's probably much faster, anywhere else. As for the weaponry, it carries 2 beam sabers, 1 in each wrist. It also has 2 megaparticle cannons on its back thrusters, a 9-2 missile pod on each shoulder, plus the claws that it has there can be used as melee weapons. There's also a 3-round grenade launcher on each claw, plus Vulcan guns on the claws as well. Needless to say, the suit is armed to the teeth and absolutely monstrous.
Hey there, Editing Shirtlad here. In this section, we also see the Zaku Cannon, a Xeon 1-year war mobile suit we surprisingly didn't get to break down, now in the hands of the Federation. This one somewhat slipped through the cracks during scripting, so I thought I'd fill in for Micah and talk a little bit about this model. The MS-06K Zaku Cannon is a ground-use artillery mobile suit, which was based on the Zaku 2 ground-type Stata and purpose-built for mid to long-ranged combat, filling the same role as the GM cannon on the Federation side. Its namesake is the large 180mm cannon mounted on its backpack, although it could additionally equip most of the standard-issue weaponry used by Zaku 2s, being commonly seen with the 120mm Zaku machine gun. Its backpack also features 2 smoke dischargers, and a pair of twin rocket launchers named the Big Guns can be mounted on its sides. In the MSVR design series, we're also shown that this mobile suit can replace its cannon with a Gatling gun chambered in 120mm. After the 1-year war, some got into the Federation's hands, which is why you saw them in the hangar. Unfortunately, these won't see much action in Zeta. Now, back to you, Micah.
Now, at this point, the AUG has begun the prep for the trip to Earth, whereas the Titans are testing Balut packs for re-entry into Earth since the upcoming battle will put them in the Earth's gravity well. As for the Mark II, it now has that flying armor of its own that I mentioned earlier for re-entry, though the rest of the suits that the AUG are going to be using will be using the Balut systems to enter the atmosphere. Though the AUG manages to launch their suits, Shirako begins an attack of his own in the Masala, destroying one of the AUG's ships in a single shot, and then destroys another. Now, this is where a screw-up happens. Bright wants Kamille to counterattack against the Masala, but Emma jumps the gun and goes after the Masala on her own, even though she's supposed to be spearheading the attack on the Earth, on top of her just not receiving anyone's transmissions. It's not really specified whether or not she's just ignoring them or if they're not getting through. I tend to say not getting through because it's kind of against her character to just ignore the word of her other soldiers. It's just not in her nature. Something must have been going on with the Rick Diaz's communication systems. Regardless, at this point, Quattro joins Emma and Kamille to give them a hand, because Lord knows they're going to need help. At this point, Paptimus lops an arm off of the Rick Diaz and the fight is on. Emma's sent back to the Argama, and the Argama spots the rest of the Titans. Bright has the suits stick to the plan though, deducing that they're really only going to need about 2/3 of the number of suits that they're deploying to actually take Jaburo. Now, Jared and Kakrakan join the melee, and at this point, Shirako takes that as his point to pull out. Now, one thing worth mentioning is that Emma really doesn't want to retreat, but she has no choice. You can't descend to Earth with an arm missing. It's a major structural weakness. even if your suit's made of Gundanium alloy. She does relent, but you can tell it hurts her pride. Also, Emma gets an earful from Bright, but it's Bright. He's correct. Nobody knows this situation better than him. Either way, Kamille wisely drags Kakarkan and Jared into the atmosphere during the fight with them, with Kamille warning Kakarkan that this will kill him, and during the process, Kakarkan's Balut opens automatically. Thing is, he's too close to Kamille. It tears, and he gets roasted in the atmosphere. On the way down, Kamille toasts another Hyzak as well, remarking on how unfair it feels at this point. For all we know, he's probably been shooting them off screen, because this is between episodes here. Either way, the assault is on. We also see as the attack begins that Rekkawa and Kai got captured. As for the Titans, they are throwing everything they can at the AU, including one-year war tech, like the Jim Cannon, the Zaku Tank, the Goof Flight Test Type, and the Saberfish, plus Gun Cannon 2. Fuck, I didn't break down any of these during the one-year war, did I? Rapid fire on the one-year war stuff. Get ready, folks. The MS-07H4 Goof Flight Test Type. It's a goof that was supposed to fly, but this one sucked at it. It has finger guns on the arms, but it can use other Xeon weapons like the 180mm rocket cannon and a 3060mm giant bazooka. Doesn't have the melee stuff by default, but it can equip it. MS-06V Zaku Tank. It's a Zaku that tanks. Has a 3-barrel 35mm machine cannon and can use handheld weapons from a Zaku 2, and also had claw arms for civilian use or to just hit people with them. The FFS-3 Saberfish. It's a fighter craft, and that's about it. It has 25mm Vulcan guns and can use anti-ship missiles or standard ones. The RGC-80 Jim Cannon. It is a Jim that cannons. It can use any Jim weapons, but obviously has a big fuck-off 240mm artillery cannon over its shoulder. Okay, this next one I will do more detail on. The RMV-1 Gun Tank 2 is, well, the successor to the gun tank. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It has 120mm low recoil cannons on the head, 180mm quad rocket pods on the right arm, a triple missile launcher on the left arm, and a 60mm machine gun on the bottom right side. It is a shockingly simple suit. At this point, it's pretty much just a mobile weapons platform. Okay, back to the assault. The AUG makes landfall and makes pretty quick work of the old one-year war suits. Kamille, though, gets a bit shell-shocked, dealing with the kills he's racking up, and during the battle he sees a monkey child clutching the hand of its now dead mother, which the mother monkey has been reduced to a gory mess. Then Jared shoots it because he's a fuck. Goes without saying the battle is fierce all over, with both sides taking substantial losses in the initial assault. Kamille, Quattro, Apolli, and Roberto are out front taking the lead, and Quattro notes the light defenses. The Federation's plan is simple. They're going to detonate a nuke to kill everyone since Jaburo is long abandoned. Luckily, Kamille has his spider sense, and he can actually sense Rekkawa and Kai during the assault. Also, Jared goes after Quattro. Lol, that goes about as you'd expect. He runs pretty quick. He then loses an arm to Kamille when he tries to pick a fight with him, but he still tries to press the attack, but seems to not understand the basic concept that Camille's rifle can be reloaded. The battle ends in a draw since they blast each other away, but it's genuinely wild how dumb Jared is. Regardless, everyone's gotta get out or they're dead. So what Quattro does is he orders the forces to get on their ships and get the fuck out of there. As for Kamille, he manages to find Rekkawa and Kai and gets them out of there safely. As for Jared, he literally leaves a bunch of wounded soldiers behind to try and get on an evacuation ship, and he's oddly enough grabbed by a woman with bluish-green hair. So he manages to fail into success once again, and he's still a fucking prick. Oh fuck, goddammit, during this fight the Gun Cannon Heavy type shows up. Motherfucker! Anyway, the RX-77-3 Gun Cannon Heavy Custom is another MSV suit from the one-year war that shows up here. There's no core block on it, and this is one of the few ones developed from a mass production test that didn't go anywhere. Has 60mm Vulcan guns, 240mm cannons on the shoulders. Beam cannons can be fitted on it. Plus, it used both the Gun Cannon beam rifle, the Jim 2's beam rifle, and can use hand grenades. Ugh! No mobile suit left behind. Okay, regardless, the AU guys make it out safely, with Kamille and Quattro barely escaping with their lives. The bomb goes off, taking everyone still in Jaburo with it. Though there were a lot of staff from the Federation that escaped, during the course of this, we saw that a lot of Federation soldiers were just sacrificed to either try and kill the AUG, or were left behind because they're too wounded to go. They didn't even prioritize their fucking wounded! Oh, by the way, We also see an old friend in a white ship from Karuba. Hayato Kobayashi's back! Oh yeah, there's probably going to be nuclear fallout in a major rainforest. Awesome! We're probably going to get mutant three-headed piranhas now. I blame Jared for this. Up at Gryps, Jamitov Hyman has come to Gryps to basically see what the Titans are up to after he found out about what happened to Jaburo. Basically, they're moving Gryps from its original position to Luna 2, fortifying the hell out of it, showing that Wong's push for attacking Jaburo was a massive fucking mistake based on shitty intel. So yeah, Wong might have money, but this guy right here, he is a fuckstick when it comes to military strategy. He knows nothing about it. He's fucking stupid. I don't know if Wong has fans, but if you exist, you're wrong. Now at this point, we see some familiar faces. Amuro is once again in Federation uniform, and he's here to meet some friends. Frau Bo is here. With her are Katz, Kika, and Let's, the original war orphans from the original series. Now, the kids have all grown up at this point, for better or worse. Frau and Hayato are married at this point, they've adopted the war orphans, and now she's pregnant with Hayato's kid. As for Amuro, we get the info that the guy is basically a prisoner in his own home, his servants likely being Federation spies. Now, if you're wondering, how the fuck did Amuro get a mansion? Well, like Bright said a little bit earlier, there were a lot of Haros made and put up for sale. Take a wild fucking guess who owns the patent to that. Yeah, Amuro is stupid rich at this point. Regardless, Katz chews out Amuro for not getting into the fight that's going on, but Amuro's basically stuck there under the label of being a quote-unquote dangerous new type. At this point, Hayato's escorting the Ayug to the Kennedy spaceport after the fight, with 40 pilots needing to head to space. As for Karuba, they won't be able to stay at Kennedy long, with Hayato stating that they'll be heading to Northern Europe. Sadly, we don't see a reunion of Kai and Hayato, but Kai does pass on a note to his old friend. Now, if you freeze frame the image, it's a pretty pleasant letter, with Kai talking about how jealous he is about not having kids, not being hitched, and it's kind of obvious he misses the old crew. Oh, he also sees through Char like the guy is transparent, and Kai just simply is not going to work with his old enemy in the same way that Hayato is going to. Either way, Karaba calculates a launch window of about 40 minutes, and Quattro gives the official order so that the Titans won't get their hands on Ayug stuff. As expected, they are hot on the Ayug's heels with another new mobile suit piloted by Major Buran Blowtorch. Blutarch. No relation. Anyway, this suit is the Ashamar. The NRX-044 Ashamar is another Titan's mobile suit with both MS and mobile armor functionality. It was developed by the Oakland New Type Lab after the One-Year War and is officially the first mobile weapon capable of flight in Earth's atmosphere on its own power, without the help of a subflight system. Now you might be asking, well, what about the Masala? Well, the difference is it can't fly on Earth, so that's the distinction. Anyway, this donut has a very Xeon aesthetic to it, with its head honestly looking like it's a relative of the Dom and the Rick Dom. As for its weapons, it's pretty standard. It has a long beam rifle specifically made for itself that's usable in either mobile suit mode or mobile armor mode. It can also use the same beam rifle as the Hyzak and the Marasai. On top of that, its systems are also compatible with beam sabers from other mobile suits. But in melee, it will usually just punch shit. Regardless, Quattro gets shown Kai's letter, with him denying that he's Char. Hayato calls his bluff, Kamille agrees that Char should just take charge and be Char and do Char things, but Quattro won't own up to it. Then Kamille just fucking punches him. At this point, Char surprisingly doesn't hit him back, but does mention the idea of feeling shame about his current situation. We'll go over this later though, since the Titans just got here. Quattro and Kamille get suited up, but one of the shuttles takes a hit and blows up. At this point, the remaining shuttle, piloted by Apolly, continues the countdown, and they move the Ayug suits off location, with Roberto, Kamille, and Quattro staying behind to hold off the Titans. The Ashamar does manage to cause some trouble, and something horrible happens. Unexpectedly, Roberto takes a hit, and sadly loses his life. Even so, the Ayug does manage to successfully get the shuttle to launch. The Ashamar is hot on their tail, but Kamille and Quattro manage to pull off an interesting maneuver, where the two suits they use stand on each other's shoulders, and they manage to get an opening on the Ashamar to damage it. After that, they manage to escape. We fast forward to another Federation base, and oh hey, another mobile suit to break down. Jesus. Sure, dude, how many have we done so far? Oh. too many. Anyway, the ORX-005 Gaplant is another transformable mobile armor to mobile suit under the Titan's development. And I say this one's got style. This particular suit was a co-development from both the Augusta and Oakland research labs. The suit's mostly known for how agile it is, with the pilot needing to either be an incredibly tough person or an enhanced cyber new type to handle it. Now, what is a cyber new type? I'll tell you later. Either way, this 25-meter tall beast is one hell of a mobile suit. As for the weapons, it's got 2 beam sabers and 2 beam rifles that are attached to the arms. That's it. Not really a super detailed breakdown, but the Gaplant is a shockingly simple and very effective mobile suit. Plus, I just really like the design and the color scheme. It goes without saying that Kazumi Fujita was cooking with this series. Regardless, it takes off supported by Act Zaku's. Ah, great. Another... Oh, hold on a sec. Shirt Dude sent me a message. I broke this one down during the 1 Year War series. Nice! Regardless, speaking of cyber new types, Ensign Rosamia Bottom is the pilot of the Gaplant, who is a, well, cyber new type that has her lungs enhanced and so on and so forth, and she is there to reinforce Colonel Buttmunch. As for Amuro, he's at the airport partying with Frau Bow, and Katz is still being a dick to him. The poor guy can't catch a break. He finally relents, though, to the pressure and sneaks a conversation with Katz to get info on where Karaba is. He borrows Katz, and Frau and the other orphans fly out to Japan, to where they'll be safe. Amuro kisses Frau goodbye, and both him and Katz head out to hijack a freighter. Yep, Amuro is joining the fight. At this point, though, Rosamia has managed to intercept the Ayug and Karaba forces. Quattro heads out on a base jabber to intercept in the skies, while the other combined forces will attack from inside the carrier. Thing is, they struggle with the Gaplant's mobility. In response, Kamille hops on a base jabber of his own to try and take the heat off the Aldumla, which is the Karaba ship that they're on. As for Kamille, he pulls a pro-gamer move and actually lands on the Gaplant and starts piggybacking it, doing the mobile suit equivalent of pulling your older sibling's hair. It's a damn fun fight to watch, though, but it concludes when Quattro comes in to help, and the Gaplant retreats. Now, when they get back on the ship, Kamille and Quattro mention that the pressure they felt was similar to what they felt when they fought Shirako as well. Oh, real quick, what is the Aldumla? Well, this is a Garuda-class ship. The Garuda class is the largest aircraft we see in the Universal Century. Inspired by the Zeon Gao, this monster of a transport ship can carry up to 20 mobile suits on top of base jabbers and dodai for atmospheric flight capability for the mobile suits that it carries. It's not exactly a fast ship, though, and could only really land at specific runways due to its massive size. Its overall length is 317 meters, and the wingspan is 524 meters. For scale, the overall height is basically 2.8 football fields, including the end zones, and the wingspan is 4.8 football fields, including the end zones. Anyway, propulsion-wise, it uses 20 thermonuclear jet engines, and sported 10 megaparticle cannons, several anti-air guns, and 8 missile launchers on each wing, 6 on the back of the aircraft, 3 on the side of the aircraft, and then 3 more on each side of the bridge. Regardless, Colonel Buttmunch heads out to try another assault on the Ayug with the Ashimar and a complement of Hyzax. Now, what they didn't count on was the shuttle that's approaching the Aldumla. Regardless, Kamille and Quattro press the attack to try and bring down the Ashimar with flechette weapons, but they don't have a ton of luck. As for the shuttle, Amuro's on it, tells Katz to get out, in which case he just fucking rams the Ashimar.
Alright, chums up.
Ready, guys?
Let's do this. Leroy Jenkins!
Yeah, it actually fucking worked. As for Amuro, he manages to parachute out of what's left of the shuttle. He then gets picked up by Kamille and the Gundam, and at this point, Amuro and Char can tell that each other are on the battlefield. Regardless, we find ourselves as party to a reunion of rivals, as Char Azdable and Amuro Ray meet face to face for the first time since the 1 Year War. Funnily enough, later on we find out that Buran Buttmunch wants to go right back out again and attack. We also find out that the Titans have brainwashed Rosamia into the idea that the Ayug want to drop a colony, which even Buran goes, yeah, that's not what they do. Regardless of Rosamia clearly being mind-fucked, he accepts her onto his team. Now, over with the Ayug and Karaba, Hayato and Amuro are catching up with Hayato, not really being that bugged about his adopted son and Katz wanting to join up and head to space, and wanting Amuro to teach Katz the ropes of piloting. Also, Amuro doesn't buy the Lieutenant Quattro shit either. We also get to see Katz and Kamille talk a bit largely about Katz's past on the White Base and that he's trained on 1 Year War suits in the past. As for Char, we find that he's looking to Kai to find out the Earthbound main base of the Titans so that they can assault it in the future. Afterwards, we finally get the immortal line from Quattro to Amuro.
I came to laugh at you.
Now, this is a conversation I admittedly had to listen to into both English and Japanese to get the whole emotional weight of it, because admittedly, the emotional weight in the English dub is not really that great and kind of all over the place, because this was done very early on in the days of English dubbing of anime in Canada. So the voice director probably didn't really know what the fuck they were doing, and nobody probably knew what the fuck they were doing. Now, over in Japanese, Shuichi Ikeda and Toru Furuya give it a bit more depth. You get the sense that as much as Amuro puts on a brave face, he hates the fact that the Federation has put him in a cage, and he is a mess of emotions at this point. At the same time, he doesn't know if more war is what he really wants in life. Everything is just completely up in the air for him, and he doesn't know where to go with it. Then again, if you think about it, given what we know about what happens before Zeta Gundam, having Amuro Ray would have been a difference maker in other conflicts, so it's kind of a surprising decision. Now, this wasn't something that Tamino had in mind, because the fiction that tells about what happened from 0080 to 0087 was published decades after Zeta. But this is a fun thought experiment, to imagine if Amuro Ray hadn't been shuttered away. Amuro Ray gets put into the Gundam Unit 7 in 0081, and the Invisible Knights get turned into space dust. If you put Amuro Ray in front of Anavel Gato in 0083 instead of Ko Uraki, Anavel Gato's new name is Anavel fucking Deadman. Imagine living in the Americas like Amuro does, and seeing a colony hit the Midwest, and think to yourself, why the fuck didn't they call me to stop that? It's an incredibly disarming feeling, knowing that you could do something about the things that are going on around you, but not knowing if you really want to, or if you can, or if you've still got it, and all these other things. It's this weird feeling of hopelessness that I feel like a lot of people struggle with in their life whenever they see things that are catastrophic around them, and they feel absolutely powerless to do anything, and consistently question whether or not they can actually do something about it. It's part of what makes Amuro so relatable as a character. Also, at this point, we also see a Karaba ally is coming in with a fucking biplane of all things. It's at this point that we meet the very lovely Beltorchica Irma, a Karaba operative. She's also got a major crush on Amuro. She even sniffs the guy. Now, don't get it too twisted, she just smells the soap he used and she likes it. But one thing that Amuro also notices is that Beltorchica is made nervous by Quattro, who she has some interesting insight into him just by, looking at him. Specifically the idea that Quattro seems like a man who can't live without war, which will come into effect later. Over with the Titans, they've caught up to Karaba again, with Rosamia heading out on her own to attack the Karaba ship that everyone's on. Now, while the other pilots are getting prepped for combat back over with Karaba, Katz, of all people, grabs the Gundam, with Kamille being forced to use the Rick Diaz instead. Now, Amuro wants to head out in a Nemo, but he gets stopped, and funnily enough, Beltorchica is able to sense that he is scared out of his mind. Scared of what is kind of, again, up in the air. You can guess several different reasons. But for those wondering, Beltorchica is a fellow new type, which is how she reads people so well. Regardless, everyone takes battle positions, and the whole fucking thing is a clusterfuck. Katz has been training on Zaku 2s, and now he's trying to pilot a suit that not long ago was the bleeding edge of mobile suit tech. It's like going from a 2002 Ford Focus to a 2024 McLaren W1 in terms of tech. See? Not every simile or metaphor I use is food, so Katz ends up eating shit, or in this case, drink, as he falls in the water. Now luckily, Quattro is here to pull the Gaplant off of Katz. Funnily enough, once Katz gets a lecture from Kamille as they're on the Dodai, he manages to pull off one hell of a shot when he nails the Gaplant on the left knee, hitting it perfectly at the knee joint where there's no armor. I feel the need to emphasize how good of a shot this is, because earlier in the fight we saw Quattro connect with a shot on the center mass of the Gaplant, and the Gaplant manages to shrug it off. Katz also managed to connect the shot, shooting over the Rick Diaz's shoulder without damaging the Rick Diaz. Some people might not like me complimenting Katz because a lot of Zeta fans fucking hate this character, and they have their reasons, but we gotta give the kid some props here. Either way, Quattro follows up by wrecking the other leg, and then Kamille puts the kibosh on the Gaplant, each shot that they land nailing it between where the armor meets, Rosamia barely escaping from the explosion. Regardless, for you Katz haters, to balance out me complimenting him, here's him getting corrected for stealing the Gundam.
I didn't see the enemy. I sensed her.
Ah, domestic abuse. Now, at this point, Burton Buttlover refuses orders to return to the Kennedy because he wants to continue the pursuit of the Aldumla. As for the Ayug, Beltorchica and Amuro end up chatting a bit. Funnily enough, she ends up smooching him, and is pretty blatant about the fact that she's both very into Amuro and just wants to see him get back on the horse. Oh, and Quattro walks in on their love session. Yeah. The two discuss leaving a suit behind for Caraba, with Amuro insisting on the Rick Diaz, and that he plans on staying on Earth. Now, one interesting bit about Quattro's conversation with Amuro, both here and with the whole I came to laugh at you thing, is that Lala soon comes up, with Quattro thinking that Amuro doesn't want to go back to space because he's worried he's going to see Lala again. Now, this is more me trying to explain things, because this is called Gundam Explained after all. After the last time we saw Lala Soon, she was killed by Amuro while saving Char's ass. I don't care what anybody else tells you, in that battle, with Amuro and Sayla facing down Char and Lala were getting their asses kicked. And if Lala Soon does not get in front of Amuro's beam saber, Char Aznable is a dead man. I don't care what anybody else says, they're lying. The thing is, she should be dead, right? But new types are different. This is around the time in the Gundam fiction where the concept of new types tends to start getting fleshed out, but also gets way more confusing and never gets any better. I don't care what anybody else says. All the way from here up to fucking narrative. New types are stupid and confusing at times, and there's a reason that people fucking hate them. What Char is basically saying here is that because they are new types, they can sense the souls of the dead. Now, why can psychic empaths sense the souls of the dead?
You tell me, man. I only work here.
Anyway, Katz is going to go up to space, so good for him. Beltorchika also apparently used a messenger pigeon to let people know that the launch plans are the same in regards to getting the Ayug members in their suits into space. Beltran Booty Man also has figured out that this is what they're going to do. Regardless, we see that Amuro is finally getting back into a mobile suit. Also, it's weird, but also weirdly heartwarming, to see that Char, of all people, is being as cool as he is in working with members of the very white-based crew that he fought against 7 years prior. Since with Gundam G-Quack coming out as an alternate history of Char getting his hands on the Gundam at Side 7 in the first series, I wonder if there's ever been an alternate history of Char saying fuck Zeon when he saw his sister at Side 7 and defecting to the Federation at that point of the war. Probably a Girin's Greed thing somewhere about it. Somebody will tell me. Anyway, enough theory crafting. Time to fight. Amuro senses the incoming mobile suits, but keeps it to himself for now. As it stands, orders are that the Hyakushiki and the Gundam are going to be going back into space, and Amuro engages the enemy. On top of that, Kamille joins the battle as well. Admittedly, they're more insistent about the Hyakushiki going back to space than the Gundam. Also, Beltorchika is flying around in her fucking biplane, and reminds Amuro that Katz needs to be headed into space. So, Amuro gives the kid a gift. A gun! Now specifically, this is the pistol that he used during the 1 Year War, and he shot at Char with. Also, Katz uses it to threaten Quattro into going into space and not waiting for Kamille. Ballsy, but one thing that Quattro notices is that the safety's off and tells him that after they go into the shuttle. At this point, we have Kamille and Amuro taking on the Titans, with Hayato sending out unmanned Nemos to try and ram the bastards. Now, Blowtorch Booby Man does pretty well against the Mark II, but Amuro gets Kamille on his sled, and the two team up. We also see that Amuro's instincts are still stupid sharp. When they manage to damage the Ashimar while it's trying to hide in the fog. Keep in mind that mobile suit combat, like I mentioned earlier, due to Minovsky particles, is mostly visual. So the fact that they couldn't see him, but they could still hit him, gives you an idea of how good Amuro's senses are. Like they said in the 1 Year War, it is literally like he has eyes in the back of his head. Plus, he's just very skilled and experienced, given how much combat he saw. During the battle, we also see him just flat out cut the backpack off of a Hyzak while going at high speeds. It goes without saying, when it comes to the Universal Century, Amuro is the best pilot. There's a reason in Super Robot Wars games that he's always one of the best units you use, and he's always regarded as the #1 guy, even over characters like Hiro Yui and Domon Kashu, and that's saying something. When it comes right down to it, his precision and his instincts are just unmatched. Now, though Blur Herma tries to gank a beam saber from the Mark II during the fight, Amuro sees it and just dices that hand off, and then stabs him and kills him. By the way, doing all of that in free fall! Either way, Blahumana has finally been defeated. So after all of that, The mission is a success. The shuttle heads back to space, and we effectively have a full return of the legend himself, Lieutenant Amuro Ray, both in body and in mind. And from here, Kuraba, along with Kamille and Amuro, will be headed to Hong Kong. In the next episode of Gundam Explained, complications continue to arise as Camille's fate continues to change. A massive Gundam deployed by the Titans attacks Hong Kong, and a mysterious young woman gets the romantic attention of the young new type. Love, hate, duty, and death are in the future for the young pilots as the war with the Titans intensifies, and a sign of Zeta is seen. Next time on Gundam Explained, the Gryps War, the Call of Darkness. You will see the tears of time.